Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Lights Out podcast here, and we are once again in deep dive territory. I'm Miguel Iturrate. That is the MMA detective, Mike Davis, joining me. We got Chris Lytle waiting in the wings. He will be ushering in another little guy. We've gone from heavyweights to Mark Hominick last week with a fascinating interview at the lighter weights, and we have a stiff follow-up. Mike, what do we got?
We got Leonard Garcia. Leonard Garcia is a guy that based himself out of Texas and kind of went back and forth to Colorado and eventually wound up in New Mexico at Greg Jackson's. He's kind of a guy that I don't think he's going to pull any punches. Real close with Cowboy Cerrone from the independent scene, and I don't think he's going to sugarcoat much. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a good interview, an exciting one. On a side note, our subscription base has doubled in the last 30 days because of all the liking, sharing, and subscribing. Miguel, this has helped us immensely. On top of that, December 3rd, I'm at Canterbury Expo Center in Minneapolis, World Class Grappling and Ignite FC MMA. I'm doing a color commentary. December 17th in Chicagoland area, Bourbon Street, 115 Bourbon Street, doing a color commentary there for Ignite FC. And February 5th, I'm in Tampa, Florida, once again, World Class Grappling. Please sign up on Smooth Cop. Miguel, this is going to be a good interview, brother.
I'm looking forward to it, but first I want to throw a little shout out for Lights Out Bourbon. Chris getting into the bourbon business, and we're all with him on that. We'd love to see it succeed, and if you drink a little, listen to the podcast. It's all good. ConsFineWines.com is actually shipping in the United States out of Indiana. Cons, KAHNS, FineWines.com. And
right, also, guys, we've got a promo code. If you spend, let's just say, $500 at betdsi.eu and use the Lights Out promo code, they give you 50% of your money on top of that additional cash in order to gamble. It goes up to $1,000. betdsi.eu. We got some good, always got fights happening every weekend. betdsi.eu, promo code Lights Out. And with that, Miguel, I think it's time to start the interview.
Bang. Hey, welcome back to the Lights Out podcast. I'm Miguel Iturrate. We got, as always, the MMA detective, Mike Davis, and we are in deep dive territory. We've got another veteran MMA fighter, and Mike, we're in the 135-pound division, and we are with Leonard Garcia, and I'm excited as hell. How are you? What do you got for us?
Go ahead, Leonard. What's up, brother?
I'm doing great, man. How are you guys?
So you're retired now, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Are you working in the gym, or are you working a job, or are you done?
Yeah, no, I have a 9 to 5. I work in oil field automation. It was something I was into before I got into fighting, and I had a little bit of electrical experience, so I jumped right into it and became a just a regular, average, everyday working guy.
No, far from it, my friend. Far from it, man. Very few people have walked your path, man.
Yeah, it was good. It's a lot of fun working out there with those guys, and of course, I mean, everybody has either seen a fight or heard of the fights or something, unless they've lived under a rock. But everybody's real respectful, really cool, and they think it's just cool that I'm out there working with them.
Isn't that wild? You just, you knew how to punch someone in the face. You could take a punch, and now they're looking at you like, why are you here with us?
Well, I tell them all the time. I tell everybody, I was like, man, I was just lucky enough to have something that people wanted to watch, But I mean, at the end of the day, I spend 8-9 hours a day with a group, and I'm like, I'm just like you guys, man. We're everything's still the same, everything works. I was just lucky enough to figure out that I was good at something that you guys maybe take interest in, and I ran with it.
That's good. That's smart. So why don't we start from the beginning? Because Miguel, as heavy-handed as Leonard Garcia was, he entered into the scene as a submission guy, which to me is mind-blowing. So why don't we start with your beginnings?
Okay. So I started in, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Was taking Jiu-Jitsu for about, 6-7 months. And then
where at?
In Lubbock, Texas.
With who?
Clay Pittman. So Clay Pittman was a Carlos Machado second-degree black belt. Back then, he was a first-degree. And Carlos Machado, of course, cousins to the Gracies. They came in to the United States in about the mid-late 90s. And I got into jiu-jitsu in 97. So 97 is when I started training. 98 is when I started fighting. And,
wait,
I was,
you got to fight in 98?
Yeah, I believe that was my first fight. I think it was in 98.
Okay, your first fight that I have on record, and it might be wrong because record's a little sketchy then, is May 1st, 1999 on Unified Shoot Fighting 15.
No, okay, so Unified Shoot Fighting was the premier,
or shoot wrestling.
Shoot wrestling. That was like the premier place where that was basically like the mini UFC for us guys. So there was a lot of global local circuits. So Plainview, Texas, where I'm from, had a local circuit. I went there to watch a fight. I'm sitting in the crowd, and the promoter, at the time, walks up to me and he's like, "Hey man, can I talk to you for a second?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You take jiu-jitsu, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And he was like, "You just came to watch fights?" I said, "Yeah, I was come see what's going on." He was like, "Are you interested in fighting?" I was like, "Yeah, for sure. I definitely, that's why I came to watch tonight." And he said, "Well, my main event dropped out."
Who's the promoter?
Jesse Camargo was the guy's name.
Okay. And what's the name of the organization?
It was PSDA Shoot Wrestling Federation. I have a title from them, so that's how I remember.
Okay.
My very first fight we're sitting in the crowd. He's talking to me. He's like, "Yeah, the main event dropped out. He's not going to be able to fight. Would you be interested in fighting in the main event?" And I was like, "I mean, what's it pay?" So you got to remember this 1998. He was like $500. And, in 98, $500 went a long way. So I was like, so any other stipulations? He was like, "Yeah, we're going to go get you some shorts and a mouthpiece." And, it was open palm striking and jiu-jitsu.
Pancrase rules.
Yeah. So I said, let's do it, man. So I jumped in there and what did I do? I guillotine choked the guy in the first round in like 45 seconds, man. It was crazy. I hit him with the open hand, like I slapped him with the left hook. And
like that Stockton slap?
Yeah, it was the original Stockton slap because it was back in the 90s.
The Lubbock glove.
He ran right into the left, and then he crumbled, and I grabbed the guillotine and choked him out. We danced around for a little while. That's why it took 45 seconds, but it was good. So I won there, and then I had another fight after that where I defended that title, and then they brought me into the USWF, that Unified Shoot Wrestling Federation, and so this place was where all the guys were, like everybody who Guy Mesger's group, the Lions Den, all of those guys. So really, they brought me up from Plainview to be a body. If you'd have seen the dudes that were in my locker room, it looked like the rejects. You know what I mean? One dude was fighting. One dude had like jorts, jean shorts, but he had cut them up like Daisy Dukes, man. And what the hell is that dude's name? Something Star was his fight name, And I was like, man, this was back when transgender stuff wasn't normal, you know what I mean? Or it wasn't, to me, it's still not cool, but, some people, would do what they do. And this was back then. So I didn't know if he was just like a Def Leppard fan or maybe a Queen, something, but he was out there in jean shorts, but my locker room looked like the reject room, And
were you making friends there, or
no,
was it?
man, I was sitting in there uncomfortable as hell, and I was watching these dudes coming back, holding their arms and knotted up from the slaps and this and that, and I was like, man, so you get uncomfortable when you're in a locker room with a bunch of guys who are losing. It's an
Well, let's set the table. It's a 4-man tournament.
Yeah. So, and the guy that's on the same bracket as me, we have a chance of fighting each other. And I'm like, I'm hoping this dude wins because I'll shellac him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I'm sitting in there and, our event was the main event, the 4-man tournament for the USWF title. And all these other guys are going before us. So I'm hearing stories about my opponent. They're like, yeah, Brent this, Brent that. He went.
Well, here, let's start with Chris Cantrell, your opening round opponent.
Yeah. So Chris Cantrell was on the other side, and he comes in, and we start scrapping, and I armbarred him real quick. It was an odd fight because he was so long and lanky, and I like yanked on his arm for a good little while because the arm bars were so new back then that we didn't. The extension was a little different. Everything was taught a little more basic. So I remember getting it, and he pulls up out of it and like tries to lift me up, and I stretch back on it, and I feel his arm bend, and then he starts tapping, so I let go. And the ref didn't see it, so I had to re-grab his arm and do it again.
Oh,
and so it was like it was terrible for him because his arm got popped twice. Yeah.
Let me ask you, because people that know you from your latter days, you're a 135 pounder, but this is 1998, and weight classes weren't that 90. Still, weight classes weren't that important then. How big were you, and what was the discrepancy when you were facing these guys?
Chris is here,
I
Miguel.
remember weighing in. I think we had to weigh in at 145, but I remember, the scale was like one of them old school scales. It wasn't, the weighted scale, anything. It was like one of the old ones that you'd sit on.
Like from Walgreens.
They would say everybody was 160. You know what I mean? Like, every single person on there is like 140, 150. Everybody's 150. It like teetered back and forth. So it was really awkward. But yeah, I remember weighing in at 145 at the doctor's office, and I got there, and I can't remember what that scale said there, but everybody was the same weight.
Really? So you go into your second fight.
Perfect.
Did you have like an adrenaline dump or anything like that in between bouts?
No, it was good. So that was when I fought Brent Medley there, and
that's your finals. Brent Medley's in the finals.
Yeah, he's in the finals. So he smoked his dude in like 19 seconds as well. And then we go into the finals, and we scrap, man. We get it on. He's got a really good wrestling background, solid submission game, and so
he's just had 5 fights up until this time.
Yeah, and this was only my third fight, and then I had fought local guys, and he had been fighting on that USWF circuit,
There's like a difference in talent.
It did very, very different, very, very different. Like he was fighting guys who were training to fight. I was fighting dudes who probably got an offer in the audience like I did, So it was just, it was a really good fight. Well, right in the middle of the fight, my hand, I guess, closed a little more than it was supposed to. And I caught him with the left hook and rocked him. And they stopped it. Like, they stopped it there, it said, went to the judge's scorecard, and he had gotten some takedowns on me. So they gave him the decision because I had punched him with the legal punch. So, it was kind of like, that it didn't sit well with me because I felt like we had been whooping him the whole time. And other than a few takedowns, it really didn't feel like I had lost the fight,
Was there bad blood between the two of you?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say that. We everybody was telling him, man, this kid out of nowhere came and, I feel like he beat you. If he hadn't punched you with the closed fist, I think he would have won. So he's taking all that flack down there because they're like, yeah, you fought some street kid and he did this and that. So we rematched each other and I triangle choked him in the first round really quickly. So it worked out really well, man.
All right. So this is Guy Metzger and Steve Nelson's event where essentially what you described earlier is you've got the B team in your locker room.
Yeah.
And then you got Lions Den in the other locker room.
Yeah.
Was Brent Medley a Lions Den fighter?
Yeah, he was I think he was a Steve Nelson guy. So Steve Nelson was holding the promotion and Brent Medley was one of his students.
The Reaper, Brent Medley, bro.
Yeah, the Reaper. There you go. I can't believe I forgot that.
He had a good reputation though, for sure. That's a very good win because back in the day with the pedigree of the Lions Den, he had a good rep and he was winning.
Yeah. He was definitely of course I watched fights of his after we had fought the first time and I definitely noticed his takedowns when he was coming in, the way he'd duck his head. So we knew he was going to be open for a triangle choke as long as, I landed some good shots coming in. He wouldn't want any part of that. So we studied that, and that's how we were able to get him out of there so quickly.
That's fun. That's cool. All right. So from there, and Chris, you're muted, just so you know. So from there, May 1st, 1999, that's your first recorded fight. Obviously, you fought 2 times prior to that. Did you take an entire year off? Because May 18th, 2000. All right. This is where things get interesting with your record. Okay. 1, you take a year off.
Yeah.
2, you're now in Colorado. So now you're kind of going back and forth to Colorado. Would you mind walking us through why that is?
So Duane Ludwig married my cousin, Jessica. Of course, now Ludwig. And he marries my cousin and they live in Denver, Colorado. Well, in between this last fight where I beat Brent and the time that me and Duane got in contact with each other, I broke my leg.
How'd you break your leg? Was it training or like riding a motorcycle?
Yeah. We're messing around playing football and I busted my leg, man. Yeah.
But you think about it, like you think about it from Duane's perspective. All right, we got this cousin in Texas. He does these like backyard fights. He's got to be thinking, oh man, an idiot. All right. Oh, he's gonna come visit.
Bring him over.
No, man. It was the complete opposite. So Duane came down for the fight in Texas. He was actually there with Sven Bean, which is the owner of Ring of Fire.
Right.
Sven gets with me right afterward. Me and Duane meet each other, and we're like, hey, we've been buddies right away. And then we start talking, and he starts telling me about what he's doing in Colorado. And then he gives me a call, and he's like, your girlfriend, I mean, my girlfriend is your cousin. So I was like,
so you guys met before you knew?
Before I knew, yes. Yeah, so Sven just asked him to come down to some fights in Texas with him because he was going to scout out some opponents and bring some guys up from Texas to bring into the Ring of Fire. So I get to meet Duane. Duane goes home and tells his family, man, I watched this scrap in Texas. This kid, who's the kid? Leonard Garcia. Like, oh my God, that's our cousin. Did he look like this? They started describing. And Duane's like, man, I love that kid. He's a great kid. And I mean, like I said, we hit it off right away, man. We're
really,
yeah, it was cool, man. Because it was like an instant, right away. We knew, and Sven, me and Sven hit it off as well. So Sven asked to start managing me, brings me up to Colorado, and I start training with Duane. So I was a solid jiu-jitsu guy back then, and was I think I was only a purple belt then, or a blue belt, and then went up with Duane, trained with him, Christian Allen, Nate Marquardt, all those guys, and it just started growing from there.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So
your second fight, you're out to Colorado. So usually it takes people 7 or 8 fights before they get a plane ride. And, you win a tournament and you're on your way to Colorado, Ring of Fire #1, actually, May 18, 2000. At 155 pounds, you fight Puma Green.
Yeah. That
Cool
was a French savant kickboxer, Puma Green. Duane fought that night as well, so it was cool, man, because I got to go down there and train with Duane. And it was kind of the same deal with that guy Puma. You know, I landed a leg kick, he landed a leg kick. We started throwing punches, and he takes me down, I armbar him. So it was a really good look for me, because I showed some of the stand up that I'd been working with Duane, and then also was able to go to the ground and get a good finish.
What brown belt are you at this time?
Now I'm black belt.
No, then.
Blue belt.
Okay, see, you did it right, man. You did it right.
I guess I don't know. It
Where were
didn't
you
feel
getting-
right back then.
Where were you getting your jiu-jitsu up in Denver? Who was taking care of you there?
Nate Marquardt. It was what was the guy's name that was teaching with Nate? Amal Easton.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Stud.
I know him, at least.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm still a white belt, man. That's some
Okay.
bullshit.
Okay. Why? Did you just never get belted?
No, I've never owned a gi, man. I put some gis on a couple of times, but like at one point I was training someplace and the Brazilian guy's like, I will give you a no gi black belt. I'm like, that's for you, not for me, man. That's to help you promote yourself. I'm out. I don't want it, So I don't want that. Like, I don't train with gi, man. Don't give me a fake black belt. You know what I mean?
So of course I did jiu-jitsu for quite a few years, and when I went up to Jackson's, I was I don't know, like some brown belt, like a second degree brown belt, and then Greg started doing a MMA belt system. So when I got there, I remember he had me and Cowboy as blue belts because we had just joined the team. And then over the years, we all progressed so my black belt in jiu-jitsu was awarded to me just because I got a black belt in MMA or whatever, the Greg Jackson camp. So when I came back home, the instructor there, we rolled a couple times, and then he stands me up in front of the class, gives me the black belt. So I'm kind of with you on the you kind of name the guy, I'll give you a black belt in this, or I'll give you a black belt in that. But as far as following the curriculum, jiu-jitsu wise, I only went curriculum wise all the way up to a brown belt.
I have a question for you, man. This is gonna be way off the subject. You brought about you and Cowboy being at a Winkle John, whatever. But I had a funny kind of feeling about that when Cowboy and Mike Perry was gonna fight, and I felt like they picked Perry. And then I talked to other people, and they're like, "Well, Cowboy would just kind of show up for his fights, and Perry was always there." I mean, did that not settle well with you? How'd that all play out? And then, if you don't want to answer that, I get it.
No, it definitely didn't settle well. Here was the main issue with Cowboy was we would go to Greg's and we would follow the curriculum. We were doing everything they would ask us to do, but Cowboy always wanted a place where we could train, just whoever wanted to come up and do, fight specific stuff. Like say I have a fight and Greg would work game plans and other things. But, if Jon Jones was in the building, it was about Jon Jones's game.
Yeah.
And, so we thought, to take a little load off of Greg, we will create our own little, we'll still come to all the classes, but.
Well, no, wait. Did Jon Jones take up the entire gym?
Yeah.
Tried to.
I would say yes. He would take the pad coach, the guy, Winkle John, who would hold pads for everyone. So some days you would get work, and some days when John was there, nobody would get work. Because
would he make these guys follow him and watch him hit a bag, even though they're holding pads, or would you be able to work in with them?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's like, y'all go do kickboxing over there, and we're gonna work with John over here, and then we'd have a group of guys come in, and John would bring some of his own guys, and then when they needed like a body or something, they'd call you, hey, come over here, and So we felt like, when the superstars were there, it was like Jones, Pierre came down, quite a few times. Rashad, Rashad was real cool though. Him and Keith would typically always ask us, "What are you working on?" You know what I mean? What can we help you with? So Cowboy would return the favor, and then when Perry came, Perry was just a body. You know what I mean? He was like he would stand in wherever they needed him to, and I think he felt acceptance, and he liked that, but he didn't look at it as, man, I'm fixing to fight this big jiu-jitsu guy, and they got me in here being a body for this dude, and I'm not working my jiu-jitsu. I got to figure something out for myself. So that was the avenue that Cowboy took. Like, I'm still going to go to the classes. I'm still going to do everything. But as soon as they try to make me a body, I'm gone. I'm going to hold my own training sessions over here and do my thing. So it was, it definitely wasn't a shot at any of them. We understood those guys were bringing in money, and we were too, but it wasn't quite the magnitude of what Jon Jones was bringing. So,
with less hassle on your end.
It was
I mean, you made the news, but nowhere near as many times as him.
Yeah, but most of that was for bad shit.
Exactly, man. So it was good. And when I heard that statement about them cornering Perry because the Cowboy wasn't there all the time, I kind of distanced myself from that. And then now it's awkward because the very first gym that we started at, which was Jackson Winklejohn, was on Acoma Street. Then they opened up that new facility downtown, and me and Cowboy weren't allowed there after a while.
Really?
Yeah. So
why were you banned from there?
Oh yeah, I mean, because I was, when you ride with Cowboy, you kind of get associated, and so I was.
You really ride with Cowboy.
Ride or die with him.
And that was the other thing too. If he wasn't welcome, then I didn't want to be there either.
Yeah.
So
no, that's your friend, man. No,
yeah,
you
man,
did the right thing.
I love that. Hey man,
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was cornering Mitrione, and we were in I think Jon Jones was in the same locker room, and he's up warming up and talking all this stuff, and like he kind of goes up and throws up a little bit, and geez, they ran over there and started patting up his mouth, and we got to get the throw off. My coach and me were just looking like, what the fuck? It's like, man, if I told Pat to come and wipe my mouth off, he'd have thrown his shit, he'd have lost his shit. And if he tried to come do that to me, it ain't gonna happen. So I just saw a whole different level of pampering there. I was like, I ain't cool with this, man. I was just like, it rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, I'm out, dude. My people still laugh at that. Like, I'm gonna throw up. You want to pat? Get the hell out of here, man. It was just it was weird. That was where I first started seeing this is weird, man.
So everything you just described, we picked that up right away. Like the second he would come into the gym, it was a Jon Jones show, which was, Jon Jones was a great dude. He was way younger than I was, and he was super talented. He was just a little bit wild, you know what I mean? Like I typically wouldn't go out and do any drinking, but you would hear these stories and you would hear this and that, and then he'd come in there. He's a great guy, man. We got along real well. I just didn't like the way they pampered him. And I don't think that was his fault as much as just they knew he was going to be a superstar. So they figured, shoot, the closer I can get to this guy, the better it's going to be for me. And, at the end of the day, I had to respect, I respect anybody to do what they want to do. And if that was it, but that was the reason that we separated ourselves and started doing our own thing. And then when the Acoma Jackson's opened back up, that was our buddies that reopened it, and it was still Jackson's, and Greg used to still go over there. And mind you, Greg wasn't as close-minded as some of the other coaches. Like Greg did, try to take time with us and try to do different things. So when we had the opportunity to go back to that gym, we would still stop in quite a bit. Matter of fact, for my first bare knuckle fight, I went back to that gym and trained there for that one.
That's cool. All right. So we're going to get back on track, Chris Lytle. Give me a minute,
Sorry.
buddy. Oh no, that was good stuff. All right, so you get your rematch with Brent Medley, the Reaper, and was there a lot of back and forth? I was not there. Obviously, there's no video online, but I had heard that there was some people from weigh-ins that there was a little bit of bad blood between the two.
Yeah, we definitely didn't like each other. He was struggling to make weight. And I remember, I was okay with fighting at whatever weight class, especially back in the early days. I think at one time in the early days, I was going to enter a tournament where I was opposite of Heath Herring. So imagine that, the weight class differences back then. So, at the time, making weight it wasn't what it is today, So he couldn't make weight. And he ended up making it somehow. I don't know how he did it. I didn't get to see the weigh-in, but they said he made the weight. And I
believe
it's his promoter. His promoter is his instructor too.
So I said something about it. I was like, yeah, well, we'd never seen him on the scale. And then he said something back almost like in the sense that maybe I was like afraid of him or trying to make an excuse or something. And we exchanged a couple words there, and we didn't almost fight. We just kind of said some stuff to each other. Everybody got between us like we were gonna fight. But I mean, at the end of the day, I knew the very next day we were gonna fight anyway, so it wasn't no point. I knew I was ready for him this time around, and I knew I was going to finish him. So I was like, yeah, I'll just wait till tomorrow night. But they did make it seem a little more dramatic. Like a lot of people jumped between us, like, oh no, settle down. And I was like, we're not fighting till tomorrow night. But he was acting crazy, like trying to act like he was
Hold
trying
me
to
back.
Yeah. So I was just sitting there like, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And it never really made sense to me to act that way at weigh-ins. Like, you've got a contract, the dude's gonna show up, he's there weighing in, he's gonna be there tomorrow. Why jeopardize the fight or do something stupid the day before? Doesn't make any sense to me.
So you win with a triangle, first round, and you get the main event.
Yeah.
Evan Tanner, Travis Fulton.
Yeah, that was great. I remember sitting back and watching that fight, and Travis Fulton was the dude that fought every day. You know what I mean? Like, I can't remember how many professional fights he had. Do you remember, Chris?
It was a couple hundred. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, he would fight every weekend, man. And then, he fights Evan, and I believe Evan got him with the mounted triangle or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was cool to watch it. Now so many years later, I didn't realize, Evan was going to be who Evan turned out to be. So I was like, man, it was cool, to be there in the early days.
Yeah. Did you ever work out with Evan?
What year was it?
98, 99, 2000. Yeah.
2000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I worked out with Evan a couple times. He was more of like back then, what I would call it now is more of a CrossFit training type workouts. You know what I mean? That's pretty much like describing it now. That's how I would see it. We would do all types of stuff: run, jumps, pull-ups, grapple for a little bit, then jump rope, then slam the balls and grapple again, and then hit pads. It was like nuts.
Really?
He would go through this crazy routine, and he was making it up on his own. So it was like whatever he felt at the moment. He's like, okay, high knees, and we'd be grappling and then stand up and do high knees. So I was like, yeah, it was. I mean, it was different, and you definitely get into shape. But I don't, I definitely didn't. It's not a good training regimen for nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I remember Evan, I remember the first time I fought in Japan, he was on the card. The dude was just an athletic, strong guy who could muscle people. I mean, he was just throwing people around. I don't know if I would say his technique was overall superior, but man, the dude was a physical specimen, and I didn't realize he went hard, but then later on I found out that dude was partying hard too. I mean, that dude was knocking back afterwards for real.
Yeah, him and a couple of other guys would they would start in the locker room, like right after training. You know what I mean? It was like game on, then, and I would see stuff like that all the time. And I was like, man, maybe I should be crazy and get into some of this stuff. But, it just never really appealed to me. I never really had like an addictive personality as far as any type of drugs or alcohol. And funny story is I quit drinking alcohol before I became legal.
You haven't had a legal sip of alcohol?
Do I now?
Have you had a legal sip of alcohol?
Yeah. Well, since then, now like nowadays, I'll drink every now and again. I'll drink a glass of wine, and the other day we went to go have dinner, and my wife ordered an amaretto sour, and I tasted that, and it didn't taste like beer. It didn't taste like anything bad. So I helped her drink that, but that's as far as it goes for me. I'm not a real big on alcohol.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and I don't know if this is gonna sound weird. I don't know if it's because I'm always always waiting maybe for something to happen, but alcohol at that point where you start feeling a little bit funny, I feel vulnerable for some reason. Like I feel like man, if something happened right now, would I be able to react? And I don't feel 100% when I have that different feeling, so I just never push it past that.
That's smart.
What you're supposed to do is have 2 more drinks, and then you feel like you beat up everybody.
That's what everybody tells me. They're like, no, that's right on the verge where you're really gonna start feeling good.
That's the problem, though. You start thinking you're too good, it's not a good thing, man.
It's not a good. I understand. So yeah, I typically I'll get a little bit of a head change at about a half a drink. Like if I got a glass. About halfway down, I'll start feeling it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
That's good.
And I typically won't. I've never pushed it past that. I think on my birthday, Schoaf was down, and
dude, Tommy Schoaf.
Yeah,
that's the man right there.
I drank 2 glasses of wine, and I, it was a happy time. Everybody was here, all the people around me. I was really comfortable with, and I remember getting into that second glass, and then I stopped myself because I started getting funny, like it started getting fun, like it, everything seemed a little funnier and this and that. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna quit right here.
I know, Leonard, we got the new Lights Out bourbon. You might have to try some of that.
Okay.
You hear that shameless plug? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. But Leonard, I got a geek question for you too. Also on that card, another Texas legend from back in the old days, Paul Jones. Was that somebody you had any access to, or anything you remember about him, or not? I
don't, man.
Okay.
Okay.
He's a wrestler. He's about 190. He did UFC. He used to wear a singlet at times. I think he was probably out of Nelson School, but that's all good. No problem. He was on that card though.
Okay. Yeah. On those cards, it was so sporadic back then. Like, you really didn't even know what lineup you were, when they were going to put you. I knew we were the main event, so I knew we were going to be the last fight, but you never knew the order. And then back then, technology wasn't what it is today. So we were in the back dressing room while the fights were going on, and then the dude would just show up like, "Hey, you're next," So it was kind of one of those deals.
Cool.
Right, so on February 10th, 2001, you enter your second 4-man tournament.
Okay.
Ring of Fire 2. Your first opponent, Shawn Simpson.
Shawn Simpson was a wrestler. You know what? I don't know that Shawn Simpson really had the wrestling pedigree. He just looked like a professional wrestler. Like he was solid. He was stocky. He was a little funny looking. And the crazy thing is, I threw a kick and he checked it with his foot, like a flat foot. Like he almost caught my shin bone with the bottom of his foot. So it was like really awkward. And I think it was an accident. I think he picked his leg up while I was throwing a low kick, and I kicked his foot. So then we kind of like tangled up together, and he tried to pick me up and slam me. And mind you, this was back in what was it?
2001.
Okay, so this is 2001.
Denver.
Nobody had seen a flying triangle before, and he because he grabbed my leg awkwardly after we stumbled into each other, I just jumped up in the triangles there. So I didn't know it was a flying triangle. I didn't understand, hadn't even seen one yet. But it was like I, got it midair and kind of climbed his body, got it up there, tied it in, and got the choke. So it was kind of cool.
You invented it.
I didn't invent it because
Yankee Sudo ripped you off.
Somebody called it before then. I can't remember. Soneca, I think that was the jiu-jitsu guy. Maybe
Okay.
That was pretty famous back then.
So you triangle him in 32 seconds.
Okay.
Great first fight. Yeah, for great first fight because you're fresh going into the second, where you fight a Kuma Ryu student, Jake Thunder Hatton.
Jake Hatton.
I got one question before you even start. Was he wearing gi pants?
Yeah, he was wearing. He had the bleach blonde hair, and he was wearing. I can't remember if he had the gi pants on.
He had to have been. There's no video of this.
Okay.
But like I looked at him. I'm like, let me really break this down. I found him like his first 7 fights were out of a TMA gym. There's no way he wasn't a gi pants bro. There's absolutely no way.
He probably did. You're probably right. And we scrapped pretty good, man. I dropped Jake with the left hook, and then I think I guillotine choked him. If I remember.
Yes, second round guillotine. And the few fights that I've seen of his outside of yours, because it's non-existent, he seems to be a pretty big ticket seller too.
He definitely had a crowd. So Chris might know who this guy is. He was the Giants drink guy.
What do you mean?
Okay.
You remember Jake Hatton? He was I don't know if he was the president of Giants or whatever.
No way.
He was something somewhere at that point. So
I believe that.
I didn't even equate the two. There's no way.
Yeah, he comes to me after right when I got signed to the UFC, and a couple fights after is when Giants was like all the way in. And he comes to me, sent me a bunch of drinks, and they sponsored me because I had fought him, So it was kind of cool. It worked out in my favor in the end.
Nice.
But he was definitely a business major or something, and fighting was just kind of something he did back then. It wasn't really a career; it was more of a hobby, I think.
That's Giants. It's a really interesting story. It's almost like a shell game that entangled a whole bunch of high-end people. And when the UFC broke, like the big wigs there had to bail like everybody out. It's a real interesting. We should do like a little segment only on Giants because I could break that down pretty easily. All right, so June 30th, 2001, your next call. Dude, this is when the WEC is a big show. They have you come and fight Victor Estrada, WEC 1. And there was big things for that organization on the horizon, you could tell.
Yeah, for sure. So that Ring of Fire had a pretty good feel to it. But the WEC was definitely a different type of promotion. They just treated the fighters well. I remember we got chiropractic adjustment before the fight. So so it was odd. They had a chiropractor there, one on each side, and they did an adjustment before you get out there. And I thought that was real cool. This was way early on. We weren't being treated like superstars then because we weren't on TV. Nothing was really going on, but I thought it was cool to have a chiropractor give you an adjustment right before the fight.
Was it at the Palace?
Yeah, at the Palace, yes, sir.
Lemoore, California.
Lemoore, California, yeah. So we fought outside of the Palace. It was an outside venue, and a cool story about that is I got to meet Dennis Hallman for the very first time, and then I got to meet Chuck Liddell there as well. So it was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you win by head kick in the second round.
Yeah.
And Dan Severn and Travis Fulton is the main event.
Yeah.
How amazing was that fight?
It was so here's the backstory on that fight. I broke my leg again when I kicked him in the head. So
really,
the first time I broke my leg, I had to have a plate and screws put in. So when I kicked him in the head, one of the screws hit him right on the head, I guess. And it vibrated the screw in my bone and it fractured it. But because I had that plate in there, it held my leg and my bone in place. So I had a plate and 16 screws. It broke at the 13th screw towards the bottom, all the way across to the other screw because of the vibration. So we drove out to Lemoore, California from Plainview, Texas for that fight. Yeah, we didn't fly.
how far was that drive?
That's got to be 18 hours.
I think 19 hours. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's
So
miserable.
drove all the way down there and drove back with a swollen leg in a Cadillac with 4 other fighters. And, you know, they had all lost their fight. Like one of the guys fought Cruz Gomez and got knocked out. The other guy fought one of Chuck Liddell's guys and got knocked out. I won. I beat Dennis Hallman's guy. And I'm in the back seat almost in tears, man, because my leg won't stop hurting. And these dudes are all socked up, all happy, you know, because we got to fight at WC. So in Arizona, the AC busted in the Cadillac. So mind you, Arizona's 100
This is karma.
degrees.
This is karma, bro. You did something wrong.
Check this out. So I have a fever because my leg is broken, right? So I'm burning up hot. Then the AC busts, so I'm back there having heat flashes, man. I don't know what's going on. My leg's broken. So I was like, dude, something's wrong with me. Let's pull into the emergency room. Pull into the emergency room in Arizona, and they asked me if I have insurance. So I call Reed Harris. Check this out. I call Reed Harris, and this is when I knew that I would always fight for the WC anytime they called me. Reed got a hold of, you know, got his people on the phone for WC, got the insurance forms taken care of. They treated me real well in Arizona. And it was kind of cool because we got to go into the cold hospital and out of that steam box that we drove up there in. And they took care of my leg. They put a big old cast on me, gave me some crutches. And then we drove the rest of the way back home. And so it was kind of a cool story, but that was the backstory on. That's why it wasn't as cool. Like I think it would have been so much better if my leg hadn't broke, you know?
Well, because
but you
Reed
did the
Harris,
right thing.
let me just Reed Harris goes online screaming about how it was a fake fight. So I was just hoping, you know, you would say it was great, and then we'd reverse the car.
Oh, I thought you meant okay. No. By the way, Miguel did the same thing for me, man. When I separated my shoulder, he paid for my stuff in Indy. But my drive home was a little different. My buddy Tony Ross gave me a couple pills, I don't know what was in them, and drove me to the liquor store. We bought a 6-pack, and all the way home, I'm like, I think my shoulder's all right now. It's fine. It wasn't, but so if you'd have just drank some stuff, it would have been all right.
Yeah, with the ticket.
You absolutely did the right thing going to the hospital in Arizona, because I got to tell you, New Mexico doesn't get any cooler.
Yeah, I definitely regretted having to get back into the car, but I think we actually rented a room and slept during the daytime so we could drive at nighttime so it would be cooler. You know, so it worked out fairly well, I guess. You know, we made it home at least.
Neil and Victor Estrada, his opponent had an upside down record, but if you look at the guys, he was like 5-11. But if you look at the guys he lost to, it's like Melvin Gillard, Bob Cook, Antonio McKee. It is just like stud after stud after stud. So he definitely wasn't afraid to fight tough.
Yeah, he was a tough dude. I definitely didn't know very much about him. I just knew he was one of Dennis Hallman's guys, and he was out of Washington, and that was really all I knew. But it was the WC calling, so we were on the way, you know.
So that break did it make you take another year off?
Yeah, I took I think a year, maybe 2 off. And then I went to Austin, Texas, and I did a boxing match. So, yeah. And
is that Miguel Ortiz?
Miguel Ortiz.
That's what the box rec list is, your boxing match.
Okay. Yeah. So I had been 160 pounds walking around, and I showed up in Austin, Texas, and they offered me a boxing fight 2 weeks later at 144 pounds. And back then, our weight cutting thing was just, we would sit in a sauna or run with the sweatsuit on. So for a week, I just cut weight, and then I went out there and fought. And man, I had like the worst performance I'd ever had in my life. But I remember being super lightheaded the day of the fight and just didn't feel good. And then I studied cutting weight after that because I realized that we had done something wrong, and definitely didn't work in my favor.
Okay, so there's a couple interesting things that happen now. So you take a year off, obviously leg break, take a boxing match. March 15, 2002, Sven Bean does you a super solid. He gives you a high-end wrestler named Steve Horton that just refuses to learn jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So you got a real shredded guy that's a wrestler that's going to go for a takedown against, a guy that's probably a little higher than a blue belt at this period in your career.
Yeah, for sure. So, it was really good. Sven did a really good job matching me up, managing me, and I felt like they were all really good. Stylistically, it made sense for me.
Okay, so was that a last-minute replacement because it was a title fight?
Which against Steve
Horton.
I don't remember that one
because you won the Ring of Fire title that night, and it you look at Steve Horton's record and you look at yours, and Horton is like a jacked up dude, like he looks the part, but he's got no jiu-jitsu. I figured, looking at it, having no background on it, it appears to be a last-minute replacement.
I can't remember if it was or if it wasn't. I think we just got pulled in there, to be honest with you.
All right, you take another year off.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there so much time and space in between your fights?
Man, MMA didn't pay a lot of money back then, and to be able to go to Colorado and train, or to be able to be down here in Texas and actually get ready for a fight, it didn't make as much sense. And then back then, I definitely knew I was winning fights, and but I didn't know that it could lead to the UFC this quickly. You know what I mean? Like I had no idea that it could turn around in one day. So I would just take time off and work like regular jobs, and then just kind of keep training and being ready for the call.
Well, now you're 7-1, obviously, and Sven puts you in a hard fight. He puts you in Ring of Fire 7, title defense fight against future UFC veteran Justin James, who is 6-2 at the time. That's not an easy fight, man.
Yeah, it was. I remember he called me up for that fight, and I had just had that boxing fight, where I had cut down all that weight, but I was pissed off because that boxing fight didn't go my way. So it was like I had something to prove, And he calls me up and he says, Justin James, and I had watched Justin fight on the last card, the card before. He sent me some videos, and I thought he had a really good style for me, so it made sense. So I took the fight, and it went really well.
Yeah. So you won by rear naked choke, first round, 228. And here we go. I mean, Leonard, I'm looking at like this time off. I'm thinking like you're doing little stints in jail here and there.
No.
Because you take another 3 years off.
So this is where
Mikey went to college. What the hell, jail?
That guy.
Funny twist. So I'm working at Frito-Lay as an assistant manager. I go fight Justin James, and man, I kind of met some guys that were on the wrong side of the law.
Oh.
And yeah, well, here's the thing though. I was more of a face guy, like, you know, man, if you mess with us, we're gonna get Leonard, you know. And it kind of worked in my favor until one of the guys got caught with a lot of stuff, and you know, a lot of illegal stuff, and we were all implicated in the deal, like a lot of us.
Okay, so it's a federal thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So
that's serious.
Yeah. So
and that's this period?
No. So that happened. Okay, so this guy gets caught with this stuff, and I say, you know what? I was stupid for being around here in the first place. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm gone. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna chase this career down. And you know, this was kind of stupid, but I don't want to be around these dudes, and I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. And you know, just stayed away from everybody. And then I run off. I get into the UFC and have a fight against Roger Huerta. Then have a fight against Cole Miller, and then Alan Berubie, then Cole Miller. Then I get switched over to the WEC, and I fight, you know, here.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, okay. We got you.
Okay, and then Pulver. After the Pulver fight, I come home to Lubbock, Texas, or to Plainview, Texas, and I go visit Lubbock, and a police officer picks me up
at the airport.
It was like almost like they knew I was coming to Lubbock and boxed me in, you know what I mean? So then they take me to jail and tell me that they have, you know, a federal indictment or an arrest warrant.
Man, that's no joke.
Implicate me on a conspiracy. So I go in, and we're like in there for like 2 weeks, and then me and 6 other guys, you know, they put us all in one cell together, and they had.
Wait a minute, they put you in one cell together, and is it the same guys in on this conspiracy?
Yes.
Oh no, dude, you gotta keep your mouth shut, bro. Oh no.
Check this out.
No way.
So
that's a setup.
Yeah, they put us in there all together, and they give everybody paperwork, every single guy in there. And then the way I think of it is they listened in to everybody talking to everybody. You know what I mean? Like, hey, man, this is the day that this happened. This is the day that you did this.
That's dude, yeah, let me tell you something, man. That's crooked police work.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And were you afforded an attorney?
No, yeah. So Peter Dropick from the UFC, I believe, was my attorney. Yeah.
You might have been the only guy with an attorney. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, I'm in there, and mind you, like I said, I was never, you know, doing.
Well, see, but you say that, but there's a guy in Europe. His name escapes me right now. He was the muscle for European, like, you know, cartel. Dude, he did 8 years just for beating up a couple people up.
Okay. Well, mind you, I never did any like beating up or anything. I was more of like, you know, just kind of the dude that was around, and you know,
everyone knew
you know, threat. And you know, guys knew that I was a fighter, and they're like, yeah, stick around here. Here's, you know, some little money for this, a little money for, you know, hang around here and make sure nothing goes, you know, sour or whatever. And you know, we're in there, and everybody's telling their stories to each other, and you know, they call me from my lawyer does, and he's like, dude, Just sit in there, you know, and we'll be there to get you in a couple weeks. You're good, you know.
Couple of weeks, you better get your ass over here in a couple hours.
So mind you, the
Ain't
reason
that good.
The reason he said a couple weeks is because they have to do an internal investigation while they have all the guys there.
Okay.
So they kept
can I interrupt real quick? All right. So for everybody at home, I'm going to give you some free legal advice that would normally cost tens of thousands of dollars. When the feds got you, you've got to assume that they've listened to at least 9 months of every phone conversation, every email, every text message. So there's 3 things that you can do. Go in and plead guilty immediately and get the lowest deal possible. Tell first, because you get to work a deal. Or if you've got nothing to hide, you wait and you be the last person. And that last person, they already know everything. So you're just confirming rather than telling. That's the only 3 things you can do on a federal case. They have over a 98% success rate, and a 2% that they miss on. It's because they kick it down to a local level where there's another 90% success rate there. There's probably less than a dozen people walking around the United States right now that have beat federal cases. Go ahead, Leonard.
Okay. So, they separate they start taking, you know, we're in there for a few days, and then they start letting us make phone calls home. So everybody's on the phone, everybody's talking. Then they take us to a plea thing or something, you know, where they kind of tell you, how do you plead not guilty or not guilty? So I noticed there was like 5 other guys in that room that really were kind of like quiet, weren't really talking to anybody, kind of hanging out. And they wouldn't engage in conversations like the others would. And I, you know, listened to my attorney and was just like, yeah, just sit there, watch TV, shut your mouth and kick back. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be there in a couple weeks to get you. Just shut up. You know what I mean? Don't talk to anybody. So I'm in there minding my own business. You know, when guys talk to me, I would talk, but you know, they really didn't have anything to throw, like you did this or you did that. So their stories were more amongst themselves. Well, when we go to plead guilty or not guilty, we come back for a day, and then it was a Saturday and Sunday. Then Monday, they take us all back up to the same courthouse that we were at in Lubbock, and they start offering guys a deal. Like, hey, man, will you take this long for this long? Because we got this crime that we're going to try to take you to court on. And then they take me to the back, and they're like, hey, man, just plead you know, guilty to something, and you're going to go do a boot camp for like 6 months. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, no, I'm not pleading guilty to anything. I didn't do anything wrong. Like I didn't sell drugs, and they come back, and then they tell me, you know, Peter's there my lawyers contacted me, and he's telling me, you know, it just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, we'll be there in like 2 days, and you're coming home. And I was like, okay. So they take us back to that place. They dress us all out, you know, give us all our street clothes. Me and 5 other guys rode back. So the conspiracy was not, I don't know what the wording was, but there was a lot of people implicated that weren't part of the thing. And the police officer that created the whole issue had got caught doing something wrong, and it was like a huge mess. But I got to come home, and that was the end of it, you know?
Yeah, very rarely do the feds ever miss, but you know, like on the high end people, a lot of times they overcharge to make you testify against them.
Okay.
So that's not right either. Like that's not right.
So I leave from there. I go back into the WC. Wait a minute. I haven't fought Jens Pulver yet. I go back.
Wait. You haven't fought Rocky Johnson yet after a 3-year layoff.
Was it Rocky Johnson?
Yeah. It's your co-main event, April 1st, 2006. After this is like where I kind of want to go down. So you have 3 years off, and you're 7-1. Sven Bean's obviously tied in with the WEC UFC at this time. I mean, he's got a real good rapport with them. He's on Fight Pass now. And did he tell you, you got to win one more fight and then you go right to the UFC?
Mm-mm.
So then why did you come back after 3 years? Usually fight careers are in the rearview mirror at that point.
So I was still, of course, always working out, always training, and I always just wanted to fight. He had Alvin Robinson, who had gotten injured 2 weeks before the Rocky Johnson fight. So he calls me. And I show up there and I beat Rocky Johnson. And then after that,
rear naked choke.
Yeah. So it all worked out, like, just in sequence. It worked out perfectly.
So when do you get the call for the UFC to fight Roger Huerta? April 7th, 2007. That's like another year.
I fought Rocky, and then I come back home, and I don't know if I broke my wrist or so I went to the Ultimate Fighter 5 tryout, right? In between this time and that, or Ultimate Fighter, yeah, it was 5, right? With Nate Diaz, Manny Gambarian. I get flown out for the tryout. During the tryout, I popped my wrist really bad. Then they got me in a hotel room upstairs, kind of hanging out. We can't go talk to anybody. Nobody can talk to us. They're bringing our food to the thing. And they take me to go do medicals because I guess I think I'm going to be on the Ultimate Fighter season 5. And when they do the medicals, they find out that my wrist is fractured. And I had no idea. So, whenever I went down in the grappling portion of the tryout, I guess I fractured my wrist and never even knew it. So I go to the MRI thing. They see it. They send me home with the cast on. And then they call me like 2.5 weeks later. They called Sven, and Alvin Alvin is supposed to fight Roger Huerta, and Alvin gets injured. So he calls me again, and he's like, hey, this is an opportunity. I know you're going to do the Ultimate Fighter, but because you had the broken wrist, you couldn't do it. How's your wrist? I ripped the cast off that day. It's just like, the wrist is good. Yeah, it's fine. It didn't hurt before they put the cast on. So it's been in a cast for 2 weeks, so it's coming off. We'll be ready to go. So I had 3.5 weeks to get ready for Roger Huerta. And, that's what we did. We went to, go ahead.
Yeah, let's frame this properly. It's actually fight of the year candidate. And it was fight of the night then. Some people were saying it was fight of the year. It's in Houston, and you got two boys from Texas, Roger Huerta, who's 18-1-1, and Leonard Garcia, who's 13-1. And at the time, you got Greg Jackson and Duane Ludwig in your corner. Was this, before we start breaking down the Huerta fight, was this at the time when Diego Sanchez was with Greg Jackson?
Yep.
So he also had a falling out with Greg over George St. Pierre working that.
Okay.
Would you mind breaking down like what it was like working out with Diego at that time?
So Duane Ludwig, of course, was my favorite fighter coming in because he was not only related to me, he had a really good kickboxing style. And BJ Penn also was one of the fights that I watched the night that I got the call to go to the Ultimate Fighter 5. So of course I always held BJ pretty high and the things that he is able to do. And number 3 favorite fighters before I met him was Diego Sanchez. He was one of my favorite fighters.
I can see that.
Yeah, because he was on the Ultimate Fighter. He was kind of weird, but he was winning all these fights.
Intense.
So I meet Diego, right? I come down to Jackson's and we're fighting on the same card. So we train together. And I've always chewed tobacco, like from the time I was 12 years old. I'm a country boy, man. Like I was born and raised on a ranch. Horses, cows, pigs, chickens. So I've always been a tobacco guy my entire life, pretty much from 12 years on. I run into Diego and I'm in the gym and we walk out of the gym and he's like, hey man, you want to go to the movies with us? And I was like, yeah, man, let's go. And I threw a chew in and Diego Sanchez tells me, man, you know, that's probably not the best thing for you. So I'm in my vehicle contemplating quitting chewing because Diego Sanchez just told me that might be bad for you.
Wow.
Check this out. We pull up to the movie theater and they're not getting out of their car, right? They're like all sitting in the car and I'm in my car because there was like 6 of them in that car. I get out of the car because I'm like, man, why ain't they getting out yet? I get out of the car and they open up the door and a cloud of smoke is falling out of the car. And he's like, hey, you want some? And, you know, at that point in time, I had the realization that, you know, everything that I believed about him probably wasn't as true. So I got all the tobacco that I had on me at that moment, and I horseshoed the hell out of it, man. Like I was contemplating quitting because Diego Sanchez had just told me that's probably not the best thing for you. Then I roll up on his vehicle and he's in there getting smoked out, you know? So
kind of like, it's kind of like when Hacksaw Jim Duggan got caught with the Iron Sheik doing coke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You guys are enemies. You guys are friends. So Roger Huerta.
I lost a lot of respect for Diego that day, and it definitely changed my way of thinking of who he was, you know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Harness the lightning like he did, or sit upside down and get hit like a bat, or whatever the hell he does.
Yeah, I don't know what Diego definitely has some mental issues, you know.
So do you
like legitimately mental? Like The Ultimate Fighter was a preview of it for the world to see, and you know, he kept getting more and more outrageous. Like remember the cartwheels and you know all these different things, and his stories about aliens and all this stuff. I just think he's done a lot of drugs, and it ate up. You know,
it wasn't the weed, my friend. It was something else.
It was something else. Yeah, I believe that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. But he's made UFC news, but not like your local cable station news, which is kind of surprising to me. Like I figured, you know, it just wouldn't be MMA news, you know, that he'd be, you know, popping on. Yeah. So Roger Huerta.
Okay.
You take it. But 4 weeks notice, 5 weeks notice.
Yeah.
UFC 69, notice. Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
Two guys coming in from that state. Probably, I think this is probably a state title if you had to.
If we had to,
put one aside. So, what was your thoughts going into that fight?
Man, you know, I was in the UFC. That was it. Like I don't remember anything else other than I can't believe I'm walking out and it's a UFC and I'm about to fight Roger Huerta, or I'm about to fight this dude. I didn't even care what his name was. And that was it. Like, you know, I trained really hard for 3.5 weeks at an actual MMA camp. So they asked me at Jackson's when I first got there, did you wrestle in high school? And I was like, I mean, sometimes. And they're like, what do you mean sometimes? I was like, hey, you know, I've had a couple street fights and we kind of tussled a little bit, you know, fell down, had to get back up. They're like, no. Did you wrestle in high school? And I was like, what are they asking?
That's something you got to think about, man.
Yeah, so like,
the answer is no.
Well, and I was like, yeah, I'm telling you, every now and again, like I've wrestled, you know, and they're like, no, like wrestling.
Were you on the team?
And I said, like Hulk Hogan, man, everybody just burned off. You know what I mean? Everybody takes off. They're like, what did you just say? But to me, wrestling, like jiu-jitsu was all I had ever seen other than football. And of course I had fought some wrestlers, and then of course we were close to Amarillo, but I never had any wrestling training, you know. So when I went to Greg Jackson's and they asked me that question, it was odd, man. Like I remember they would try to teach me some stuff and everything else, but I just had no wrestling background. It was like all jiu-jitsu. I would like pull guard. If a guy was going to take me down, I thought defensively I'm supposed to pull guard, but that's a takedown in MMA, you know? So I learned a lot in the Huerta fight, you know, a lot about wrestling. I think he took me down 100 times. I'm not sure, but yeah, he took me down kind of when he wanted to. But you know, I was able to keep getting up, and you know, I made a fight of it, man. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time. And then after that fight, we got paid a ton of money because it was like fight of the night bonus. And that was the first time I had ever seen, you know, money in that way, shape, or form. So it was like, it was a lot of fun. And that's when I said, you know, I'm never doing jiu-jitsu again. I'm just going to start training all stand-up because that's what people want to see, you know?
Okay, so let's kind of rewind just a little bit. So the fight starts, first off, Roger Huerta's on a 12-fight win streak, and he's kind of like the becoming a poster boy of the UFC. They wanted a Spanish-speaking Hispanic, yeah, because it didn't exist at this point, at least at that level. And in the first round, you had him in a guillotine choke, and you had a big smile on him. Did you think you had it?
No. He slammed me, and I lost it. But I was like laughing because he was like, he said something when he slammed me. He was like, ooh, like he had done something to hurt me. And I was like, yeah, whatever. You know, it was more of a like, man, you didn't do anything to me, you know, more of that type of smile. If I thought I had the guillotine, I definitely wouldn't have been smiling. I'd have been leaning back on that back shoulder. The choke, you know, it was more of a like, man, you didn't do anything, you know.
Okay, so we're just throwing a lot of Taekwondo style kicks, and in between rounds, you know, you got your corner there, and it was a hard round for you. They're telling you it can't get worse than this. You know, it's only going to get better, and you're like, he ain't got no power.
Yeah,
I was shocked at that.
Yeah, he was hitting me, and it wasn't bothering me at all. So I was like, you know, he doesn't hit hard, you know. So my assumption of it was, here in a minute I'm gonna land a good shot and turn this thing around. I'm gonna stop all these takedowns with punches, you know, because I didn't know how to stop the takedown. So I was like, he's gonna run out of juice in a minute. But you know, of course, he had great cardio, and it ended up being
phenomenal cardio, like world-class cardio.
Yeah, I had no idea that his cardio was good. The fight before that I had seen was like a 19-second. He just bulldozed a guy. So when we were gonna fight, I was expecting like a big shock when he hit me. Like, oh hell, you know, I better be ready. I better be on the lookout for the next one. But it was more of he hit me, and I was like, just keep hitting me if you want to. You know, let's go.
So in the beginning of the second round, you yelled at something at him in Spanish. What did you tell him?
A enseñarle cómo pelean los mexicanos. Let's show him how us Mexicans fight.
That's awesome.
I was trying to get him to stand up, just an all-up stand-up war, not any wrestling takedowns. And so I was hoping by pushing on his Mexican machismo, I could pull a stand-up war out of him. But, you know, of course, he kept alluding to the takedown, so I was kind of upset by it. But
okay, so at the end of the fight, both guys, they go head-to-head.
Yeah.
They kneel down center cage. What was said between you two? There was a in-depth conversation. I mean, you guys bonded that night.
He told me, he said, you know, you're probably the toughest guy I've ever fought. And you know, I was like, man, thank you. You know, I appreciate it. You know, you kind of got me, you know, like you won with the takedowns. Kind of, I could feel it on my face that last little sequence when you're on top of me, you're landing some good shots. So we kind of had an in-depth conversation about the fight, but he was like, man, this was a great fight. Did you feel the crowd? You know, he was like coaching me on being in the UFC is how I took it.
That's cool.
It was cool, man. You know, I've got a lot of respect for Roger. He made a really big climb. the one thing we'll talk about in a second. The one thing that bothered me most was being the dude that got dunked on Sports Illustrated about that fight. So
yeah, he made the cover of Sports Illustrated, first time ever a UFC athlete.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was a great kick by Roger Huerta, and I'm getting like, kicked in the stomach, pushed in the corner. So I'm the dude that got dunked on,
Hey, but at least you weren't the guy getting knocked out. It wasn't, you're not on somebody's highlight video. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It worked out. It was cool to be on there. It just, it had that little sting to it, because, I was kind of like, I took the kick. So my body naturally went down. So it looked worse than what it was, but it was definitely cool just making the cover.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And
I always thought it was weird, like what happened to Roger Huerta. Like, I mean, did he ask for too much money? Because he didn't do a long stint in the UFC after that. He kind of faded away. It was kind of a weird thing for so much positive going on, so much hype behind him, and it just kind of didn't ever materialize like I thought it would.
He became a superstar. He
became Conor McGregor before McGregor. Yeah.
So, but he didn't parlay it. He just kind of, you know what I mean?
So he was dating Donna from the 70s show. The girl that plays Donna on there. I can't remember her name. What is
that? The redhead girl?
Yeah, the redhead girl.
Oh,
he starts dating her. He gets some calls about some movies, and then he goes out there and has a bad showing against Kenny Florian.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of went downhill from there, man. I think he thought he was going to make it big in the movie industry, and kind of took his focus off fighting and just kind of
he was doing tons of interviews. Like, he was complaining that he was doing so many interviews and the UFC kept scheduling them that he didn't have time to actually train.
Okay.
That's how many interviews he was doing. And he was like, they're not even paying me. I'm doing these interviews for free. He was like the first guy to say, I got the McGregor fame, I just don't have the McGregor money.
Yeah. And at the time, he wasn't, like, he was winning fights, but he wasn't like knocking guys out. He wasn't taking people out. He was just kind of, I don't know, man. He was fairly dominant, but it wasn't like, I mean, other than my fight with Roger, he had another good fight with who else?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
didn't do real well in one either. Like he hit a skid. Yeah. No, for sure. So from there, is Sven Bean managing you at this time?
Yes.
Okay, he's doing a real good job with you because, I mean, Huerta, not an easy fight, but they do you a super solid. They give him Florian, murderer, and they give you Monster Lobster, Rob Kahn's student, Alan Berubie.
Yeah, that was a great
show. As a free paycheck.
Yeah, so because I was on season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter, but didn't make the cast because of my hand being broken, they needed somebody to fight the Lobster, and I got the call. So it was kind of a gimme.
Yeah. And, we've had Rob Kahn on here. Fantastic interview with him. He was kind of like the kingmaker at that time with The Ultimate Fighter. I think he had like 7 people on the first like 6 seasons. Like he had like 2 students on one of the years. So yeah, Rob Kahn actually really made a presence, from the Tampa Bay area on that show. From there, I mean, rear naked choke first round. Berubie, I don't think Berubie ever really fights in the UFC again. He kind of drops a couple more fights and he's done. Yeah. You go and fight Cole Miller, not an easy fight, at UFC Fight Night, September 19, 2007. Yeah. And this is your second fight of the night.
Yeah. And I had bronchitis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. So I don't know if you guys ever get Duane Ludwig on here, but Duane cornered me for that fight, and he was trying to call the fight a couple days before because I couldn't sleep. I would, the bronchitis is real weird. It doesn't hit you till it's time to go to bed, and you start coughing and coughing and coughing. So I coughed so much, I busted the capillaries in my nose, and my nose would start bleeding. We did that neti pot, you know, where you stick one tube on one side of the nose.
Yeah.
UFC actually hooked that up for me, where they brought like a big pot, drained each side, and that way I could sleep for a couple hours and get, you know, go cut weight. And I was sweating like crazy. I made 151 that fight and didn't really even cut weight. I was just so sick that I wasn't eating much. Of course, you don't eat the last week of your fight very much anyways, but I had cut down so low because of the sickness that it was terrible. And you know, you're like I said, if you get Duane on here, he'll tell you stories.
Oh, we'll get him. Yeah, we love Duane.
They changed my bed sheets 2 times because I sweated through the sheets, you know, like the whole everything.
Why didn't you pull out?
Because I wanted to fight. I thought Cole Miller was a really good matchup for me. And I thought, you know, he's a skinnier kid. He's a little taller. If I just land a big shot, I'll knock him out. And I did land that big shot in the 3rd round and dropped him. But, you know, of course, I went into his guard and he got the long legs and, you know, did the defensive stuff and then was able to, he held me down actually with jiu-jitsu. He got a triangle choke for a little while and I got out of that. He got an arm bar. I got out of that. He had
it was crazy, dominant chain wrestling submission.
Yeah, he was just
the first 2 rounds.
He danced on me jiu-jitsu wise. I had no real like
answer.
Yeah, I had no strength either, man. It was like all of my friends were like, dude, you looked weak in there, you know, like what's wrong? And I was like, yeah, I'm sick, you know, like I was tired. I sounded funny even after in the interview. I sound all congested and I'm like blowing my nose. And during the fight, I blew tons of boogers on poor Miller. So I felt bad after the fight, but it was like a couple.
He was your Kleenex?
Yeah. He was definitely my Kleenex. He was on me like a Kleenex. So it was definitely really, that was the toughest fight I've ever had.
No, man.
Well, let's talk about the start of the 3rd round.
I just came out and threw a freaking Hail Mary and landed it, you know?
Nice.
Almost knocks out Miller.
Yeah, it was like right there, man. I felt like if I'd have had, you know, a little more oomph or a little more, you know, a quicker step, I would have knocked him out. Of course, I landed up higher on the head, so it took a little bit off of it. But if I'd have hit him in the chin, you know, I was hopeful that it would have knocked him out.
Now, Leonard, let me ask you, I had a fight like that where, I mean, I just was sick. And I mean, I remember going into the 3rd round, I was like, you almost just feel like I can't, I mean, there's nothing you can do. Did you feel like that? Going like, I can't do anything, man. It just, I felt like that. And I didn't land that big punch that you did. So I lost the decision. But man, I just remember I knew the 1st round was my best chance. And, after the 1st round was over, I didn't get a submission or a knockout. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, man. It's the most not depressing, helpless feeling you have when you just got to go out there 2 more rounds and you can't do anything. It's the worst feeling of all, but you landed a big punch. I wasn't able to do that, man. I just took it.
And that's, yeah, I took it for 2 rounds and then I was like, okay, you got to do something. And I blew my nose really well in the corner and I felt like, okay, I got a little bit of breath. I'm going to give it hell. And then I did. And I thought I had him. And then, you know, like I kind of walked over to him and looked at him and he was still up. So I was like, dang it. I tried to start punching him and he went for an armbar and I landed another big punch. But it was like, after that, I was done. It was like, you know, I remember we grappled around for a little while and he was like all over me, man. Them tall, lanky dudes in their jiu-jitsu is just, I was just escaping. But I felt terrible the whole time. After the fight, I remember I walked off. And I go back there and Duane's like not getting close to me because he doesn't want to get sick because he's going to fight soon. So he like throws the towel over my head. He's like, all right, buddy, I'll be back. And, you know, it was the worst feeling to be in a fight while being sick. It didn't feel good. Like I tell everybody that was the toughest fight I ever had.
Wow. Well, at the end, you think the Diaz brothers.
Okay.
You said, oh no, Cole, thanks to Diaz Brothers for their help in that camp. I apologize.
Might have been hallucinating, man.
Yeah. So your next fight is your 145-pound debut at WEC 32. Finally, a division for a weight class that's more suited towards yourself comes into existence. And Chris, this is the type of salad that Reed Harris does for him. Yeah, and I think it's due to the medical bills that you charged him earlier. They give him the number 5 ranked guy in the world, Hiroyuki Takaya.
Yeah, that was
not an easy fight, man.
Yeah, he was tough, man. I remember watching a lot of his fights, and he had a hell of a left hook. And it's like I feel like I have a crazy story for every fight. Cowboy broke my jaw 3 days before that fight.
No way.
Yep. He caught.
How does that happen?
We were drilling takedowns because the game plan for that fight was to take down. Cowboy throws a flying knee while I'm drilling takedowns, messing around, and the knee connected. And I grabbed his legs. We went down, and I was like, oh, hell. And my tooth broke. It broke all the way up into my tooth. So it broke my tooth. So I'm bleeding from my tooth. And it's pain, like sharp, sharp, sharp pain. I try to rinse my mouth out, and the cold water kills me. And there we had a dentist there, right? So the dentist says, let's go do a root canal because you probably have an abscess too. So they did the root canal, and he gave me a painkiller. So I take the painkiller and I go to bed, and I wake up and I'm like, oh man, it's still bad. We go in, and he x-rays my mouth, and I have a line in my jaw that goes straight down and then over. So it broke down and then back. So my jaw didn't dislocate. It didn't dislodge. It was just a thin line there. He thinks that it was fractured. And when he did the root canal, all the drilling and everything, because he never found the abscess in the tooth. He just took my roots out and stuck some plugs in there and capped it. And went back in, and my jaw was broken. Like it had a line in it. So I just figured I don't want to pay for this, so I'm going to go ahead and fight. And if this dude hits me one time, I can say that he broke my jaw, and they're going to pay for it, so we'll be in good shape.
Man, dude, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is a blue collar, bring your lunch to work guy. Chris, as a fellow union man like myself, that's a smart guy right there.
My favorite thing was, like, back in the day, after every UFC, about 15 fighters would be at the hospital. And it'd be like, you could have a 30-second fight where you landed 3 punches, knock him out, and you'd be like, well, I hurt my back, and my knee hurts, and my shoulder. I heard this in the fight. And like, you won in 15 seconds. But that was the only way you get shit paid for, Mike, was you had no insurance. And the only way you get shit paid for was by saying, fight night, you got hurt. So no matter what, everybody went to the hospital. It was hilarious. And everybody, you go to the hospital, hey, how'd it go? You can tell pretty much by the look on somebody's face, but everybody went because they had to.
Yeah. You too? Yeah. Yeah, me too.
We call it hilarious. The UFC lawyers might call it fraud. I don't know.
Yeah. Here was the thing too. Joe Silva comes up to me right after the fight. He says, "Are you serious? A broken jaw?" And I was like, God dang it, who told him? And somebody had already told Joe that my jaw was broken coming into the fight. So here's
I messed that up for you.
Who, me? That's what you should say.
It was cool. It never dislodged. So there's really nothing they could do. They put braces on these 4 teeth and braces on the other one, stuck some rubber bands in there. They didn't wire it shut because it wasn't dislodged. The way it broke was back, so it was holding it together. And I have like a small calcium deposit now in my jawline there.
Thank you, Cowboy.
Yeah, so thank you, Cowboy. And we were in the back, and I remember, Duane, everybody, like, Duane was holding pads for me, and he was like, yeah, just cut loose, man. Just go out there and have fun. And here's the most interesting thing about that fight. I was so scared to get hit that all my senses were on. You know what I mean? Like I was dodging, I was moving.
You're wired.
Yeah.
Hypersensitive and aware.
Yeah. So it was super cool because it created that technique actually. It made me more technical. And of course I was never known for being technical, but I definitely was way more technical that night because
wow. So Joe Silva, how did the conversation go with you two about your broken jaw?
that was it. That was the full conversation. It was like, are you kidding me? A broken jaw? And then I started, I was like, yeah, I wasn't gonna pull out though. And he was like, I know, man, I know. And he kind of gave me a hug and he bumped my jaw. And I was like, God dang it, Joe. And I told him, I was like, now I'm gonna tell him you headbutted me and broke my jaw. So we laughed about it. And it was cool, man. They fixed my jaw. I got the knockout of the night bonus, so it worked out really well for me.
The thing with that as well is you got a guy that's a highly touted guy, fighter from Japan, and his pre-fight interview is, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to knock him out. And up until this point, you really you're legitimately a submission guy, even though everyone listening to this podcast is going to go, no, damn fan, and they're going to list all these other wars that you had been in. But the reality of the situation is this is your first knockout.
Yeah. It was the head kick knockout and
by way of fist. Yeah.
It really was. So the thing was I favored jiu-jitsu so early on, I would hurt a lot of guys and then was able to lock the submissions in when they were hurt, like Justin James with the rear naked choke, same thing. He tried to pull me down with the head and arm takedown, and I just slipped up to his back. But before then, I was socking him up pretty good. I always had good power. It's just I never, was so aware. Like with Takaya, I had no thoughts of going to the ground because I didn't want to bump my mouth. I didn't want any of that. I wanted it to be all stand up. So it definitely, turned that switch on. And then after I got that knockout, it's just like everybody knows once you knock somebody out with a punch, it's kind of a drug. You definitely get addicted to that feeling. So you look for it every time.
That's good. So you asked for a title fight. You're Leonard Garcia. Come on, brother. I need a title fight. And they line you up with an absolute legend at WEC 36 against Jens Pulver.
So that was probably one of the highest points of life for me because Jens was Jens, and I'd always, I seen him beat BJ Penn the first time, and BJ was of course one of my favorite fighters. So he had just gone 5 rounds with Uriah Faber, and it was just a huge fight for me, man, a huge platform for me to come out on top of, and I definitely put everything into that fight.
Well, the one surprising thing to me is, one, you're not the same fighter anymore. Like whatever fighter we saw of Leonard Garcia, you just said it, knocking somebody out becomes a drug and become addicted to it. And you're not, there's levels in people's like fight lives. Okay. And you've not only upped your level, you don't even appear to be the same person in terms of how you're performing.
Yeah. So it was definitely a good switch for me with Takaya being the number 5 guy. I was in the top 10 rankings. I had gone from the UFC where I was just a guy that had a good fight with Roger Huerta. I had the ability to fight at my own weight now, where I was really comfortable at fighting because I didn't have to fight a bigger guy. I didn't have to fight this. I was fighting guys that were my size. And I felt like I had a lot more confidence in my power after that fight. So it definitely turned the switch.
Well, Chris, let's really like break this down, Chris, both of you guys, Chris and Miguel. This guy's got about 6 years of off time on the independent circuit. And then he's fighting a former world champion that just lost, in the title fight against Uriah Faber. How does this manifest?
Time and place. Yeah.
You know, you dodge a federal case. I mean, and you know, the only reason you dodged it, Leonard, I must admit, man, I met you in Cancun, Mexico, you know, at the bare knuckle thing. I had an absolute just misconception of who you were. Your nickname's the bad boy. You get pulled into a federal case.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't drink, you know, you don't smoke weed, you just chew, don't.
Yeah.
I honestly,
which Diego is still against, I believe. By the way, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. but like when you're pulling into like Jen's Pulver, I'm thinking, man, this guy is, doing the Jon Jones thing. You got it in fifth gear and you're looking for six, but the car doesn't go there.
Yeah.
Based on the little track record that the public knew about you. Like to me, this is just the shocking revelation is just how, laid back and easy and, cautious you are in regards to life, yet you're jumping in with one of the greatest fighters ever in the 155-pound weight class at 145. Yeah. So Jen's Pulver, Duane Ludwig is not in your corner.
Duane had what did Duane have when I fought Jen? He had a fight somewhere else right around the same time, and he was training. Can't remember where he was training, but he wasn't able to make it.
Okay. Yeah, I thought maybe there was a split. Like I had no idea that your cousin was married to him. Yeah. You go from there and they give you a title fight against Mike Brown. Holy cow. Mike Brown is a savage.
Yeah. So what happened after the Pulver fight is what happens to a lot of fighters. I thought I was invincible. I thought, you could hit me with a brick wall and I'd still be standing there after all the bricks disintegrated. And Mike Brown was a different type of brick wall. I walked right into a punch and I think it should have knocked me out, but I was so stubborn and hard-headed that it didn't.
Open up a cut. Yeah.
It was a hell of a shot. I mean, he caught me. Yeah, I mean, my legs just went. I remember thinking, like, my legs are gone, and the ground slapped me in the face, and I was like, oh, hell, I'm still fighting. I turn around, and he lands, I don't know how many punches, and the whole time he's throwing punches, I'm trying to think, like, okay, get tired so I can get my turn in, and I tried to reverse him. He goes into he came into my guard. I tried to reverse him, then he passes. And then when he passed, he got that head and arm choke. And the funniest thing went through my mind when he had that head and arm choke. My arm was right underneath his armpit here. And I had my mouthpiece in. I couldn't breathe. So I was trying to spit my mouthpiece out so I could bite him to get out of it. Which probably wasn't a great idea, but it's what was going through my head at the time as I was being choked. And I definitely didn't get a good bite because of my mouthpiece, and he choked me out.
How strong was he?
I tried to bite him. I did. I've been telling you guys the truth. I love it. Yeah, I was under there, and I was like, I'm not getting out of this. It's in there tight. And I seen where, I could see his body there, and my mouth was right there. And I was like, okay, just get a good bite in. He'll let you go, and then just get up and say your mouthpiece or something. And I tried to bite him, and it didn't work, man. He choked me.
Yeah. How strong was he?
Very, very, very strong. It was a, it happened so quickly because he dropped me and then he got on top of me, and it felt like I was a little kid underneath a grown man. He was just manhandling me. And that's why I think my mind resorted to, man, just bite this dude and get him off you, and start fighting. Because that's where I was at that moment. I felt pretty helpless, so it sucked.
I've done that in training before. Somebody's put me in something. I started to bite me. He's like, "Did you just try and bite me?" I was like,
"Yeah, maybe."
Yeah.
You don't do it. Just happens, dude. It's not like an audible thought. It's just like, I gotta get out of here. I can't do it.
Yeah. So that's exactly. I was there at that place, and I remember it sucked because it was in Corpus Christi, Texas. Of course, my home state, and I was thinking I was an invincible man, and then I go in there and get bulldozed by Mike Brown, and I was like, God dang it, man, how did this happen? But yeah,
we've had several people on here say that he has unhuman strength.
Yeah, it was odd. I mean, would I do it all over again? Yes,
of course.
Is there some things that I seen that I felt like, man, if I'd have just done this? But again, sitting back in hindsight, you think of so many different things, and I didn't think of it in the moment. So it definitely passed me. And Mike Brown opened up my eyes to a lot of different things. He did what I did my last fight. He was very prepared. And at the weigh-ins, he came and got right in my face. He walked up on me. And I took a page out of Mike Brown's book for my last fight in bare knuckle. I walked up and I got in this dude's face and just let him know, like, nothing you got is going to work against me, and I'm going to come for you. So that's what Mike Brown did to me during the weigh-ins of that fight. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it, he kind of got a little mental warfare during that stare down.
Yeah. We always concentrate on the beginnings of MMA and we kind of break people's careers down. Do you have a little bit more time? Because rather than go to your next fight, I'd kind of like to talk about your bare knuckle career.
Okay.
Do you have time? I mean, I know we're taking a lot.
Yeah, come on.
All right, cool. So, Chris, dude, Leonard was the main event for the time that I went and saw you fight in Cancun, February 2nd, 2019 at BKFC 4. You fought Julian Lane. Dude, you're up a weight class.
Yeah.
And you're fighting a guy with heavy hands. He's got bazookas in Julian Lane. Man, this fight lived up to the hype.
Can I take it back at 1 second though?
Yes.
Okay, your last MMA fight was 214. Now you're 2 nights, 5 years. Talk a little bit about getting that bare knuckle bite, that buzz over the sport, because we heard Chris talk about it. A lot of people talk about, well, how did it hit you?
So, mind you, okay. So look, we'll just close out the MMA career real quick.
No, we're gonna get you another time for the rest of your career.
Okay. So mind you, I go through this MMA career. I get cut from the UFC in 2014. They tell me, go to Legacy, win the title, we'll bring you back and we'll throw you right back in the mix. I go to Legacy, I win the title, I come back and they offer me like a commentating gig because now I guess I'm not, as exciting as Conor McGregor,
Really?
Jose Aldo. So they offered me.
It's not a bad thing.
Well, at the time, I'm restarting life in a different light. Like, I'm married now. I'm, really committed to going to church. I've got kids. Life is just good. And I'm trying to get back into this MMA scene with a family life. You know what I mean?
Make another run.
Back to UFC and make my last run as a family man. Everything's in check. Life is good. And then they offered me a job commentating, which is decent pay, but I'm gone every week,
Big difference.
So it didn't make sense. The money didn't make sense. The amount of time away didn't make sense. So I declined that offer and I lost my taste for competition. I went back and had 2 other MMA fights, but it was just kind of like, well, I'll make some quick money and that'll be the end of it. So I walked away from MMA with a bad taste in my mouth. Like, it was just odd. Like, I just didn't feel good about it, but I definitely didn't want to compete in MMA anymore because I did what they wanted to do. I came back and then they didn't bring me back. So I felt betrayed by the sport. And I leave and I go to work in a 9-to-5 family life. Everything's good. And then I start hearing about bare knuckle. And Chris is doing bare knuckle. A lot of these guys are doing it. And Beltron is doing bare knuckle. And I'm thinking, this is kind of cool. I'm watching it. I'm paying attention. And I'm at work. And I had just beaten got out of a big rut with the IRS because my time in the UFC wasn't so great as far as taxes go. You know,
as long as it's not a 10-8 round. As long as it's not a 10-8 round.
10-8 round for sure. And then, you know, I cleared that, got all that taken care of, and I'm living life. And Dave Feldman gives me a call, and he sends me the Beltran and Lopez fight. And I told him, "Oh no, I'm very aware of it. I see it." And then he offers me Julian Lane, you know, the Let Me Bang guy. And I was thinking, you know, of course, I'm 180 pounds now. Haven't trained in 3.5 years, but I was no stranger to doing that in my career all along. You know what I mean? I would take lots of time off and then just come back and train like a madman and then go fight. So I accepted it. I had to talk my wife into it because she was done with the fight scene. She was pregnant at the time, so it was a tough talk. But it was in Cancun, Mexico. We had never been. It was kind of cool. We were going to get away from the kids for a little while. And even though we had a kid in the belly, it was still time for me and her alone, you know, away from the family. So it was kind of cool. And I thought I could beat Julian Lane, who was, you know, the British champion or something. And they told me that there might be some title implications. So I was like, listen, you know, I made a deal with my wife. I made a deal with the company that I work for, and I made a deal with God. And those 3 deals all came to fruition at the end. I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to be, you know, have great fights that people are going to remember. But this first fight was the ticket to it all. So I got up from work, called my boss, told him what was going on. He told me to go for it. I take off from work. I go to Cowboy Cerrone Ranch in New Mexico. I go to Jackson's MMA. I train like a crazy man for 4 weeks, and then have 1 week to cut weight, and then I get to fight Julian Lane. And that painted a picture in my head where I thought, I'm going to beat anybody as long as I just drop work for 6 weeks and train. So I get in there, I fight Julian, I weather the early storm, I come back on strong, and I'm like, man, I love this. I absolutely love bare knuckle. And I go back to work afterwards. You know, people are talking about fights again. The house is full of people talking about my next fight, this, that. Go back to work. Then I get the phone call for Jason Knight.
Well, could we rewind just a little bit?
Go ahead.
Chris, we're in the middle of Donald Trump sending out mean tweets and hurting lots and lots of feelings.
Mike. Yeah.
Man, and let me tell you something. There's nothing more important than feelings. Never mind Leonard's jaw, his eye, his body. None of that. Feelings are more important.
People's feelings. Yeah.
100%. So after he beats Julian Lane, which is a classic back and forth, and it's got over 1 million views. So it's not like I got to say, go and watch it. Anyone listening to this podcast probably has already seen it. So it's an amazing fight back and forth. Leonard, would you mind if you could, word for word, give us your post-fight speech in Mexico, in Cancun? Please.
So during my time in Mexico, we're there. Of course, I'm a conservative Republican from Texas, and you know, I'm for a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing. Don't really have issues with him at all. I'm actually thought he was one of the best presidents of my lifetime. And we go to Cancun, Mexico, and one of the fighters gets a picture of Donald Trump and rips it in half. So that brought a lot of politics into conversations that people were asking me due to the fact that I was representing Team Mexico, but was from the United States and from Texas. So they asked me a lot of political questions, you know, not during the interviews, but before the interviews. So I was really voicing how I felt. And after the fight, you get this euphoric feeling and everything you want to say just starts coming out. So I want to make a point to everybody that I am a Trump supporter. And if you look at my wife's face during the interview behind me, her and Cowboy are standing behind me. And the second I start talking about Trump, Cowboy's back there cheering, pumping his arms. And my wife has got a baby in her stomach and she's thinking, we're not going to make it home. Like, he got through the fight, he got the belt, but now we're going to die. And that never registered to me. It did. It was like,
it was the greatest heel turn. Like, it was almost something out of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Hey, if there would have been a crowd there, they would have turned against us.
You know, and let's like make this come this full circle. David Feldman that night, what he had to tolerate, what he had put up with, what he had experienced, man, I think most people would have pulled the plug on that show. Like, he had people working their ass off to sabotage the show.
Oh, yeah.
At weigh-ins, like some Mexican dude, you know, like a local
strong arm.
Yeah, mafia guy tried to come strong arm him, making him deposit money into the ATM. And I got to hand it to him, man. Like, that guy's the real deal, man. Like, they tore down all of his posters. They made sure that it was bad press, if any, and then they realized it was helping him, so they gave him zero press. And no, man, that guy, man, there were a lot of miles earned that night for him. Yeah. You know, a lot of sleepless nights, but he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he did. He did. It was a great night.
You know, Leonard, it is amazing to me when people don't realize. I think it's the adrenaline that goes into your body, like. And after you have a fight and you're speaking on that mic, it's almost like you're looking at yourself from outside your body and you're going, what the hell are you talking about? And you realize it later on when you watch, you're like, did I say that? Like, you don't even realize the stupid shit you're saying sometimes. You're like, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. He's in the middle of Cancun talking like, yeah, I'm pro-Trump. You know, the Mexicans were like, yeah, we won USA versus Mexico. Oh, man.
Yeah.
It was hilarious, dude. I was sitting back and laughing my ass off.
It was and like I said, you don't realize things until you get out of the ring. And then, like, my wife is like clinging to me like, we got to get out of here. And we get back to the hotel room and I get stitched up and they're like, did you really pretty much start the build the wall chant out in the middle of the ring in Cancun, Mexico? And I was like, did I? And they were like, yeah, you know. So
you did.
It was crazy, man. It was nuts, but we made it home safely, so somebody was looking out for us.
Dude, it was. I'm like, I think we're sitting next to each other with Joe Riggs, and I'm like grabbing you, like, he's turning heel. He's turning heel. From there, August 10th, 2019, Jim Allers, who is at this point red hot.
Yeah. So I had no idea who Jim Allers was. Absolutely.
He's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah. So Dave Feldman calls me. I'm in New Mexico training. I'm 3.5 weeks into the training camp, and he's like, dude, I got bad news. And I was like, what happened? Jason Knight has a rib injury and he's not going to be able to fight. So I was like, dang it, man.
Can you imagine Leonard Garcia, Jason Knight?
Yeah, that would have been great. So he's like, I'm going to find you a last minute replacement. So mind you, remember, 5 years off, 4 weeks of hard training, and I beat Julian Lane. Now I'm up there 3.5 weeks into my camp. My opponent pulls out. They're going to find some fluffer to bring in. So I packed everything up from New Mexico and I came home. I came to my house in Texas, came back. My wife's like, what's going on? I was like, man, my opponent got hurt. They found some jiu-jitsu guy that's going to fill in, and, you know.
And that's what he was. Yeah. Some jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah.
You think it's an easy fight, though?
On paper, it is.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to cream this dude. I'm just going to finish my camp here. You know, it'll be good. So I go in and I nonchalantly finish my training camp. I cut all the way down to 155, which I hadn't done in quite some time. And I get there and I'm thinking like, okay, you know, whatever. He looks tough. It's going to be a good fight. I'm going to cream this dude. And we go out there and he punched me right in the eyeball. Like, didn't hit the bone here. He hit directly in the eyeball with the very first jab of the fight. And it squished my eyeball. When I say squished, like I was going in full force with the 1-2 because I'm thinking I just got to hit this jiu-jitsu guy one time. He has these long arms and he just throws his jab out there and it squished my eyeball and froze me for like 2 or 3 seconds. I was like, oh, hell, what the hell was that? We start going, and I remember during the whole round, I wasn't hurt by his punches. Like, I don't know if you watch the fight, it looked a lot worse than it was, but I was like, I had no bearings to me. I had no vision in my left eye. I could just see a blur sticking, like a big red blur. And I'm like, man, just get close to me so I can hit you and even this thing up. So I'm swinging at anything there. Like, if the ref wasn't careful, he was going to get punched. I remember every time he's telling me, can you see, like, he's counting and he's looking at my eye, and I'm thinking, like, he's not stopping it so my eye didn't fall out of my face, but something's definitely wrong with my eye. And, you know, I made Jim look a lot better than I felt that he was, to be honest with you.
He went on a hell of a run, though.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think stylistically, he's just got that swarm you, and he's got that Roger Huerta cardio.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I mean, he did, you know, get Julian, but Julian fought him shortly after we fought. And to be honest with you, I think those shots that I hit Julian with affected his chin at that weight class. And then he drops all the way down to 55. So it made his chin a little more questionable, because now you see him fight at, what's he fighting at now, Chris? 85?
He fought at 75 his last fight.
Okay.
I thought it was at 85.
75.
I think so, was it?
His chin is, you know, holding up really well. So I think the weight cut for 65 is a little bit tough. So I don't know. I mean, I think Caleb Harris is definitely a tough fight, and I know Jim won that one, but I just feel like I made Jim look better than he was, because he hurt my eyeball, to be honest with you. I'm not taking anything away from him. He did a great
but it is what it is.
Yeah, he landed a good shot. He won fair and square there. It wasn't nothing illegal. He didn't stick his finger in my eye. It was a full-on knuckle, and that's part of the fight game. So I'm not discrediting him any. I just feel like I made him look really good that night.
Well, and Leonard, I've seen a couple guys who got hit in the eyeball, and it's weird. I've never seen that in boxing, bare or regular MMA, anything, but I've seen it happen a couple of times in bare knuckle. And when it happens, the other person I've seen happen, he dropped down and the fight was over. He's like, I never had that. I couldn't fight. So, yeah. I mean, just you keep fighting says a lot, but man, I'm like, it's not a normal thing to get hit in the eyeball, hit in the eye socket, whatever. But the other person I saw, he dropped and it was over. He never got up. I was like, "Ooh, shit!" That was just weird.
Yeah, it's a pain and a feeling like it's unexplainable. Like, I never had my bearings after that punch, and then even coming home afterwards, my eye was. I lost a little bit of pressure in my eyeball. They had to numb it a month and a half later, numb it, stick me in a dark room for 4.5 hours for the pressure to come back into the eyeball to make it normal again. I didn't have a retina detachment, which was crazy to them, because I had a hickey on my eyeball, though. I'll send you guys a picture of my eyeball after the fight on Instagram. That way you guys can see it. It's like, for reals, I had a hickey on my eyeball. Like, it smushed the eye to the point where it had
like a bruising.
Out of that eye, I could see spots of red. So that was the blood vessels in the eye that were mushed together, and the reflection from my eyeball would come out. And I didn't know if I was ever going to see normally for 2 months after that fight.
No way
that I was ever going to get straight vision. I mean, not straight, but like without blotches,
clear
vision, and just a constant like blob in parts of my eye, like little pieces, like seeing out right now. If I was looking at a white wall, I could see like little blotches in the wall. Until that blood went through the blood vessels in the eyeball, because you have those little bitty veins, until that hickey dispersed out of there and got all the way through there, and the trauma came out of my eye, I could then see it again. So it was really scary, and it was odd, but I knew. So mind you, 2 months after that fight, I'm thinking, don't know if I'm ever going to see without these blotches in my eye. They're kind of fading. Should I call Dave Feldman and tell him, that it was a lot of fun, but I'm not going to do my last fight? And then I go back to my deal with God. 3 fights. I want to be the number 1 guy. But how am I going to get that opportunity now after losing to pretty much the champion at 155, even though I'm undefeated at 165? How do I get that opportunity now? So I just sat back and waited. I didn't do anything. I just started training. I went back into the gym, and I started really focusing on head movement, learning how to duck very little to take any shots from the eye, trying to keep my hands higher, trying to do all these different things. So I start working for, I don't know why. I just go to the gym and start really busting it out.
Well, you take another year off. You take like 16 months off.
I wait and I wait and I wait, and I'm not getting a phone call from Dave, so I'm just training. Not getting a phone call from Dave, so I'm just getting ready. Nothing's happening. Then I see Joe Elmore fight. Joe Elmore fights, will choke. And the second I seen that guy fight, I was like, dang, this dude's interesting as hell, and he's kind of scary.
And Will Choke was a heavy favorite with bare knuckle and Let's-Way experience.
Yeah.
And Elmore folded him.
Yeah.
That was shocking.
And I remember him screaming into the TV afterwards, and I was like, it was like right then and there, I was like, man, this dude is a scary, scary dude. And then he fights.
It's almost like he's wired. Like he's like one of those dudes running around the trailer park snorting meth. Like he's, he's just, he's high energy, high energy.
So
obviously that's not the case.
He fights Tom Schoaf, and
your buddy
Tom Schoaf had already become fairly decent friends. We weren't like real friend, like we hadn't really interacted much, but at the fights in Cancun, we had a really good mess. And then when I fought Jim Allers, he was there that night, and he came to the locker room afterwards, and he talked to me, and he seen my eye, and he was like, holy crap, that's crazy. And we had some good talks. And then I'm watching Elmore fight again, because at the time I'm thinking Elmore is the most dangerous guy at 165. So I'm going to just keep my eye on him. He fights Tom, and I've seen a lot of things that Tom did that I liked against him. Now, I did recognize the power in Elmore, because every time he hit Tom, he would drop him. So I was kind of like, man, this dude is really, really something. And he comes out of that fight and does an interview and screams my name out. So he's
let that happen in Texas.
Go back to my deal that I had made. I want to fight 3 times. I want to be the best guy at my weight class, and then that's it. I'll call it quits. I believe that it was an opportunity from God to fight Joe Elmore, who I was contemplating not fighting again, but I went to the gym and started training. I didn't have a name. I didn't have an opponent. I didn't have any reason to be in the gym training because, mind you, I thought if I just trained for 6 weeks, I'm unstoppable, right? Because of my other fight before. Then the Jim Allers fight, you know, I was like, well, I'm not unstoppable because I can hurt my eyes, so I got to work on that. And then Joe Elmore calls me out, and I was like, this is it. This is my ticket to retiring as the #1 guy. And you know, I just pointed everything at Joe Elmore, and that was going to be my next opponent, man. I called Dave Feldman the night that he called me out, and I was like, sign me up, man. Let's do it. And
you mentioned that you watched the Tom Schoaf fight. Whenever Tom was on the balls of his feet, he was winning the fight, and then when he'd get flat-footed, he'd get knocked down.
Yeah.
So, as long as you stayed on the balls of your feet, you know, if you're Tom Schoaf, you win that fight.
Yeah. So it was cool because at Knuckle Mania they announced it that me and Joe were gonna fight each other. So that night of Knuckle Mania, Tom Schoaf calls me on Facebook. He Facebook video messengers me, and we exchange phone numbers. He calls me up and he's like, look, I just spent 5 rounds with that guy. I know a lot about him. I want to come down and help you get ready for this fight. And I was like, perfect.
How cool is that, man?
So he comes down and by true Mexican fashion, I branded him my cousin, same as Duane Ludwig.
Well, he's got a mustache.
Yeah. So it worked out real well, man. So me and Tom, of course, you know, we become family.
You're cuñado.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man. And we come down and we formulate a game plan, and we're like, you know, hit, don't get hit. And then I train so hard the night that I get there to the fight. I remember the day before at weigh-ins, I remember him looking at me, and he's like taking pictures of himself and, you know, being Joe, like all flashy. And I believe that he thinks that I'm afraid of him, right? Because several times in my interviews, I've said, man, this is a scary dude. So I think he translated that as Leonard is scared of me. I'm going to go out there and whoop him. So we're lined up at the weigh-ins, and I remember my Mike Brown moment when Mike Brown just got in my face and let me know that nothing I was going to do the next night was going to matter. So I just decided right then and there that I was going to go get right in Joe Elmore's face and just press my head up against him and let him know that I was coming that next night. And that's what I did. So it really worked out. I felt like that mental warfare for me was won that night. And the next night, when I went in there, they were like, be leery of, you know, his right hand. Schoaf was telling me he's got a hell of a right hand. And, you know, his left hook is just deceiving because it comes quickly. But his right hand is really what you got to watch for, because Tom told me in the first round when he got hit with that right hand and did the butt scoot, that was the only time he was ever really, really hurt, where he had to like regather himself. He said the other times that he got dropped really didn't bother him too much. So he was like, you're going to be fine. You know, just
Tom's a savage. Tom Schoaf is a savage.
And now, Leonard, at what point was it when you told me how you get ready to fight him and he bends down to do like a push-up and then he just lifts his feet up and does push-ups like that somehow? So, was he trying to intimidate you there, you think?
Yeah. So that was after the weigh-ins. We go to the doctor checkup and he's right in front of me. And mind you, Joe is a very cordial dude. He definitely has that energy, but he's friendly. You know what I mean? He's a great ambassador of the sport. He doesn't really act all crazy like he does, you know, whenever.
No, he's genuinely a nice guy. No, he's like, and it's real.
He's real. A great dude. Yeah. So we're in front of each other and we're talking on the way to see the doctor. And we're doing our checkups. You know, they push your arms down, push you forward, make you wiggle your hands, fingers, squats. Then he says, do push-ups. Me and my wife are standing right behind Joe and his wife to see the doctor next. And he goes down, puts his knees on his elbows and elevates his feet in the air and then rips push-ups with his feet elevated in the air. And I'm standing right behind him and I'm looking at him, right? And I turn around away from him and I look at my wife and she's staring right at him. And I was like, Mama, she said, what? I said, nobody's holding his feet, right? And she said, no. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. And I turned around and I was like, holy crap.
You know, you should probably make him do, I bet you can't do 20 more. I can't,
you know, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm like, God dang it, man, this is a scary dude. But you know, it excited me because I knew he was trying to intimidate me, and I knew that he knew I wasn't intimidated. So it was, I at that moment, I knew it was going to be a great fight. And
it was a war.
I was pumped, man. I was so before the fight, we're in the back. And I'm ripping sprints back and forth. And Tom's like, hey, dude, calm down. You're about to go out there and fight. And I was like, hell no, I ain't going to calm down. I'm going to go and I'm going to keep this same energy all 5 rounds. We're going to get it. You know, we're going to go. He's like, you know, be careful with his right hand. I was like, to hell with his right hand. I don't care. And Tom was like, okay, you know, get in there and have at it.
Nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Fun.
And, you know, we got in there and after that first round, I screamed at him. When we were coming back to the corner, he like tries to shake my hand. And I was like, you ain't got nothing, you know? And he was like, what? Like, you ain't got nothing. And I walk over the corner and I tell Tom, he's a punk. We got him, you know, we're going to whoop him, you know, and I'm pumped up. And it was just, that's the best. I think the reason I retired as well is that's the best I was ever going to feel in my life that night. It was definitely everything clicked perfectly. So it worked out.
You know, Leonard, man, it makes me happy. There's not too many people who get to go out on a high note, man. I mean, I was fortunate to go out on one in MMA. This made me not want to do it anymore. It's like, man, you know, you ain't going to beat this. And I felt watching you that fight, you know, Joe Elmore was a scary guy. The way you came back and did it, you know, it was a beautiful thing. And yeah, well, you proved everything. And, you know, that was your masterpiece you just painted. Why are you going to paint another one? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's exact, man. You hit everything right on the head there. I felt it all. And then I felt like by not trying to step back in, I had fulfilled, you know, 3 promises that I really stood behind. And then we get offered this boxing thing just recently, Chris. And you know, I'm very, very leery about coming home and talking to my wife about fighting again.
Was it through Triller or was it?
Yeah, through Triller.
Who? Wait, come on, bro. Who were they throwing? What name?
I didn't get as far as the opponent because I knew that if they gave me a name, that it would turn it into a, let me watch some of this guy's stuff. This isn't a fight, it's an exhibition, so I'm not breaking my promise with anybody. But, you know, after sitting back and thinking about it and really reflecting with my wife and you know, a little bit of prayer and a lot of thought, I was like, you know, you made a promise, be a man of your word. You know, I've always prided myself on that. And, you know, I held to my promise and I didn't break any, and it worked out well, man. So
did you talk money?
Yeah. They definitely threw money out there. And
what was the ballpark? What were they throwing?
I would say,
come on, Mike, don't be throwing that stuff. But don't make
come on, Leonard.
Yeah. I could text you the actual offer, right? Chris, I'll do it. I'll text
Leonard, hey, I already know it. Don't worry about it, man.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. All right, so we're wrapping up. Obviously, we're wrapping up, but could you? All right, I look at myself as somebody that's fairly knowledgeable about the sport of mixed martial arts, but there's certain topics that I'm not going to say they haven't interested me, but I just haven't really spent the time on researching. You were with Greg Jackson in the beginning.
Yep.
It was Jackson's MMA.
Jackson's MMA.
And then it became Jackson Winklejohn.
Yeah.
And now it's Jackson, and then there's Winklejohn.
Yeah.
How does this happen?
There was always a split between that whole, like, it was always, like I tell you, Greg was a great guy, man. He is who he says he is. He will stand with you, and he's one of those guys. Wink was always very different. I guess he doesn't really typically have a like for you unless he's going to get something out of it. Is the way I perceived him. I don't know if he's in my personal experience with him. That's the way I felt. Now, I'm not speaking for everybody else, but I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. I felt like if he felt like he couldn't get anything from me or wasn't going to get any accolades from me winning the fight, he wasn't going to waste his time trying to help me get ready. And I typically distance myself from people like that. And I did a pretty good job of distancing myself from him.
Okay, so Jackson's got the big name. And then he goes, okay, we'll name it both names.
Yeah.
Like, he was already established.
I think it was a financial thing, to be honest with you. I think the new gym, everything else, the money that was coming in, I think Winklejohn definitely had to have it. See, to me, he was a guy who he was always seeking that title. Like, I want my name there next to yours. Hence why I said if he didn't think he was going to get
Jackson Wink. Yeah.
And like I said, if he didn't think he was going to get anything from me winning a fight and his name being brought up, then he wouldn't help. So, I just felt like he was just seeking a name, and he got it. But they're two very different people. Greg will give you the shirt off his back, and Wink will sell you the shirt off his back. So.
Fair enough.
For a small markup, for a little markup.
Yeah, a little fee.
Considerable markup.
Barely used.
So, and I feel like Greg is definitely one of those guys that would literally give you a shirt off his back and wouldn't expect anything in return.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Chris.
Hey, man, Leonard, once again, we really appreciate your time. I love hearing your stories. This is some of my favorite stuff. And I appreciate you, my friend.
Man,
and think about this. We haven't even.
Go ahead.
Leonard, we haven't even talked about your fights with Nam Fan.
Yeah, I know.
Those are first belt Hall of Fame fights.
Yeah.
Next interview, we're doing your UFC career.
Well, Chris, I was going to tell you, man, for real, coming into BKFC, you were one of the guys. I mean, we fought on the Seattle card together. A lot of good things. I always had really good experiences with you. You're always you're just a great person, man. I always appreciated that about you. And it was cool to be able to talk to you after my fight and talk these experiences during this podcast. And I always looked up to you as a fighter because of the way you carried yourself. So it was always a good thing.
Hey, man, you're part of my group, man. I was, you're an old school guy, man. And I always appreciate you guys. Whenever you're on a card, I wanted you guys to do well, man. It's you're part of the same group that I was part of, man. And I always look at you guys as different from the new group, man. It's a different thing. So you're an old school guy, and you're my favorite guys in the world, dude. You were there fighting before fighting was what it is. You fought because you were a fighter, man. I loved it.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
Well, awesome. Yeah. Leonard, thank you for your time, bro.
Mike, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, Lights Out Podcast. We just got done another deep dive in the bag. Leonard Garcia, thank you very much, Leonard. Muchas gracias for joining us here on the podcast. Mike, what do you think? Overall impression? He's a stand-up dude. I like him.
He's a lot more reserved than I had thought. Like, he, as I disclosed in the interview, blew my mind. Like, I thought he was just a wild man. Like, I thought he was just like the 145-pound version of Jon Jones in regards to like outside of cage activity, and super cool cat, man. Real cool guy.
Yeah, I wonder, it takes me back a couple of interviews to something that maybe he was reserved because, in the words of Antonio McKee, he knows not to snitch. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we're not a legal podcast.
Yeah,
but that's pretty solid advice right there.
In all walks of life. So that's why you got to thank the guru, Antonio McKee, as well. Catch him in a few interviews ago. But Leonard Garcia just delivered a solid one. Definitely interesting to see the Texas scene because it was robust. They fought in the 90s, basically. And they had, Guy Mesger and Steve Nelson and certain legendary figures in the early days of the sport there, kind of guiding things and, making things good for their guys kind of thing. So very interesting stories.
Miguel, what's your impression? Like, let's just say you're the local promoter and you've got 155-pound Leonard Garcia asking to be in the heavyweight tournament in order to face Heath Herring, who's every bit of 230.
When he mentioned that, I know Heath. I've met him. He was on the same Pride show where I accompanied a fighter, and he's a big boy. And, Texas is, I think, the first place where you could actually call legitimately the Wild West like that. They had Steve Nelson, which created some structure with his wrestling group there because it was shoot wrestling and stuff. But at the same time, it got pretty wild, at the borders and the borderland towns with Mexico and stuff like that. So anything goes. 230, 150. Hey, we've done worse than hook and shoot.
All right, so let's just drop our promo code. Guys, if you're into gambling, betting on sports, betdsi.eu. You get a 50% cash bonus with a deposit up to $1,000 by using the promo code LytesOut. Use the promo code LytesOut at betdsi.eu and get 50% cash bonus, up to $1,000. Thank you for supporting the show. Like, share, subscribe. You guys have been fantastic. We've had an amazing month. Thank you.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.